Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking an absolute masterclass in storytelling architecture, Christopher Vogler's legendary take on the hero's journey. Have you ever wondered why certain stories completely pull you in, while others just kind of fall flat? Well, you're in the right place. We are going to decode the hidden blueprint behind almost every great narrative, an ageless pattern that's just as relevant to ancient myths as it is to today's biggest blockbuster movies.
Look, if you're a writer or creator, you know that staring at a blank page can feel exactly like standing at the entrance of a massive, confusing maze. It's incredibly easy to just get completely lost. But the concepts inside this book, they act as a really reliable map to help you navigate all those twists and turns of plot and character development without hitting a dead end. And listen, this map isn't just some theoretical academic exercise. Spy magazine famously dubbed this book the current industry Bible. It is literally required reading for movie executives, screenwriters, playwrights, you name it in Hollywood. When Vogler first wrote a 7-page memo on this whole topic for Disney, it became absolute legend. From classic Disney animation all the way to massive action films, these principles are the fundamental tools used to build the narratives we keep going back to again and again. So, here is our itinerary for today. We're going to hit the universal story blueprint, map out the 12 stages, check out archetypes or story masks, dive into the anatomy of a hero, look at flaws in tragic heroes, and finally, apply all this to writing your own journey.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, the Universal Story Blueprint.
Now, Vogler didn't just invent this structure out of thin air, right? He built it on the shoulders of giants. Specifically, he took the dense, ancient patterns of world mythology identified by Joseph Campbell in his really famous book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Then, he mashed that up with the psychological archetypes of Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. Vogler essentially translated these high-flying, heavy academic concepts into a highly practical, down-to-earth guide for modern creators. It's really cool to see how Campbell's mythic, sometimes super poetic roots translate directly into Vogler's accessible framework. Where Campbell said world of common day, Vogler just gives us the ordinary world. Campbell's super dramatic belly of the whale becomes the much more actionable, the ordeal. It's exactly the same storytelling DNA, just evolved into a standardized language that a modern storyteller can actually use in a Tuesday morning script meeting.
Which brings us to Section 2, mapping the 12 stages.
Now, keep in mind, this journey is a flexible compass. It's not some rigid cookie-cutter formula. The stages can be shuffled around, deleted, or expanded depending on what your story actually needs. But generally, it maps out across 3 distinct acts, complete with their peaks of crisis and climax. It's this beautiful, cyclical journey, moving from the comfort of the ordinary world, dipping deep down into the dangerous special world, and then returning back again. Let's actually break down what happens in these acts.
So Act 1 is all about the departure. We always meet the hero in their ordinary world. Think of Dorothy's drab black and white life in Kansas before she ever goes to Oz. It creates a vivid contrast for what's coming. Then bam, the call to adventure. A problem disrupts their normal life. Naturally, there's fear, which leads to a refusal of the call. But then, meeting with the mentor, like a wise old wizard or maybe just a tough drill sergeant, gives them the magical gifts or the swift kick in the pants they need to commit. And that commitment, that's crossing the first threshold, leaving the mundane life and stepping right into the terrifying unknown. This naturally builds right into Act 2, the descent. Here, our hero has to learn the rules of this crazy new world through tests, allies, and enemies. Think of the famous cantina scene in Star Wars where those alliances are forged. This all leads to the approach to the inmost cave, basically the most dangerous spot, like the Death Star. And right at the center is the ordeal. This is it, the psychological, life-or-death black moment. The hero faces their absolute greatest fear, maybe even appearing to die, like, say, being trapped in a trash compactor. But by surviving this, they're reborn and earn the reward. They're seizing the sword.
Finally, we hit Act 3, the return. The hero takes the road back, but they are definitely not safe yet. Usually, they're being chased by some vengeful forces. They face a final, massive test in the resurrection stage. It's a second life-and-death exam that proves they've truly internalized the lessons of the ordeal. And then, the absolute necessity of the entire journey, the return with the Elixir. The hero has to bring back some healing power, treasure, or wisdom to their community, just like Dorothy returning with the knowledge that there's no place like home. Without this elixir, the whole journey is basically meaningless.
Moving on to Section 3, Archetypes, or the Story Masks.
Now, it's absolutely crucial to understand that archetypes are not rigid, one-dimensional character types. They're actually ancient patterns of personality that spring from our collective unconscious. In storytelling, think of them as temporary masks that characters wear to advance the plot. A single character might wear the mask of a mentor in one scene and then totally switch it up and be a trickster in the next. They are fluid functions that represent different facets of a complete human personality. So there are 8 indispensable masks at the core of pretty much every story. You've got the hero, obviously, and the mentor who prepares them. But you also have the obstacles, the threshold guardian testing if they're worthy to pass, the herald issuing that disruptive call to adventure, the shapeshifter constantly sowing doubt and suspense, and the shadow, the villain who basically represents our absolute darkest, unexpressed desires. Finally, the loyal ally and the chaotic trickster round out the whole shebang, providing support and usually some much-needed comic relief. All these energies just clash and combine to constantly challenge the protagonist.
Let's drill down in Section 4, Anatomy of a Hero.
The hero is our window into the story. We absolutely need to identify with them, to kind of merge with them and see the world through their eyes. But what actually defines a hero? Well, it's about learning and growth, taking in the qualities of the allies and enemies they meet. It's about taking decisive action when the chips are down. But the defining heroic act, the absolute core function, is sacrifice. Actually, the word hero traces back to meaning to protect and to serve. It shows a willingness to give up something of real value, sometimes even their own life, for an ideal or for the group.
Which brings us to Section 5, Flaws and Tragic Heroes. Think about the traditional gung-ho hero for a second, always committed, bravely pushing forward. Now contrast that with the tragic anti-hero. These are characters who are deeply wounded, sometimes they're cynical outcasts, and they're constantly battling their own internal shadows. And honestly, sometimes they never overcome those demons and are brought down by them. But those imperfections and flaws are vital. They give a character somewhere to go. They create that crucial character arc that keeps us relentlessly glued to the screen to see if they'll finally unpack their baggage.
Just look at the biggest cinematic franchises today. They use these exact concepts. Think about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Characters like Captain America, Thor, or Iron Man, they aren't just powerful, they are compelling precisely because of their deep psychological flaws. The MCU leverages their arrogance, their stubbornness, or their past traumas to evolve them into modern, tragic heroes. They're constantly battling their internal shadows, which makes their outer journeys just so much more gripping for audiences everywhere.
Finally, let's wrap this up with Section 6, Writing Your Own Journey.
Screenwriter Bruce Joel Rubin absolutely hit the nail on the head regarding Vogler's framework when he said, "This is a book about the stories we write, and perhaps more importantly, the stories we live." I really want to challenge you to see these 12 stages and these archetypal masks not just as a handy tool for analyzing movies, but as a practical handbook for navigating your own real-life ordeals. When you face a major life change, you are crossing a threshold. When you meet someone who guides you, that's your mentor. It's all connected.
So I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative question. What stage of the journey are you in right now? Are you maybe refusing a call to adventure because you're scared? Are you deep in the innermost cave facing a major ordeal? Stop being a passive audience member in your own life. Recognize the stage you're in, pull on the mask of the hero, and become the active protagonist of your own unfolding story. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer today. Keep learning, keep exploring, and I'll catch you next time.